Well, good morning, everyone. This is Michael Douville coming to you from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. Tatum and I are in the super plush studios of West USA, and this is September 22nd, 2020, and we're going to do another Creating Wealth webinar. And of course, this is my give back to you for an industry that has just made my life so much better. And my give back to you is to help you create a real estate money machine that's going to give you and your spouse and your kids and your grandkids income for decades to come. So we're going to create a real estate money machine that you can use in your retirement or before your retirement, so that this can be as a supplement to your income. Maybe you want to become semi-retired. Maybe you want to go take 6 months off or a year off. This is going to generate income that's going to come each and every month to you. So if you look on your live webinar, Tatum will monitor this, and we're going to have a place that you can ask questions. If we get a chance to answer them during the webinar, we certainly will. If not, we do it on Saturday. We get a lot of questions come in, and on Saturday I try to answer the questions that come in during the week. And it's on the Saturday podcast. I don't know if you know it's a Saturday podcast. If you look at West USA Realty podcast, it'll come right up out of the internet. And that's every Saturday. I have a webinar. I'm going to try and be very, very respectful of your time. This should take about 22, 23 minutes to go over these financial topics. So next week, we're going to talk about diversification. And of course, diversification is within our own asset class, but also we're going to look as an integrated asset class, because we don't expect all of our clients or ourselves to have nothing but real estate in our portfolio. We want to expect to have other things. So we might have stocks, bonds. Keep in mind, if you're working with some financial advisors, they really think there's only two asset classes, that's stocks and bonds, and that's just not the case. There's lots of different asset classes, and real estate certainly is an awfully big one. So let's talk about what's coming up now. We're going to be talking about principal reduction strategy. Now, why do we even have a principal reduction strategy? It's because we want you on our strategy of accumulating a house a year. We then want to get those houses free and clear as quickly as we possibly can. We want to mitigate that risk. And of course, we want to make that income to you. So the questions we get is all the time when we have a portfolio, how much should we have in reserves for our properties? How does using other people's money bring you closer to true wealth? Remember, there's more than just one other opium, other people's money. When should you use cash flow for rapid principal reduction? And what additional items should you know? So we're just going to talk about a couple other things that come up from time to time. So let's move into this. So we're talking about a principal reduction strategy. We want to try and get these properties free and clear as quickly as we can. So there's a couple of different ways we should do this. And of course, when we first acquire a property, we have an automatic principal reduction built into the amortization that we have in the payment. So we're going to talk about three different components of revenue from other people that we can use to do principal reduction. So this might get just a little confusing, so I want to make sure that we understand we have three components. One is the principal reduction that's scheduled. So if you don't do any principal reduction additional in 30 years, that property is going to be paid off due to the nature of the 30-year amortized loan. So if you put 20% down, you have a built-in return of 4 times over the life of that loan. So if you bought a $100,000 property, put $20,000 down, it's going to return to you the additional $80,000 of loan will get paid off by your tenant. So your tenant is other people's money. It's the tenant's money paying you to pay off your mortgage. So we have a built-in component in the amortization. We also talk about, in my book, we do not have a static rent, but we have a dynamic rent. So we have rentals that change. And of course, here in Phoenix, in metropolitan Phoenix and Maricopa County, we have a lot of housing pressure. So our rents are going up. and going up fairly substantially. And this has been going on for years and years and years. We've talked about the different trends that we have here, putting housing pressure, and this is a decades-long trend. So we pretty much believe that we're going to be getting increases in our rent. So that increase then becomes another component that you can use for your principal reduction. So we have the amortization in the loan, and then we have the increase. So if you increase your property from $1,500 to $1,600, that's the rental increase. That's an additional revenue to you, paid for by your tenant, that you have available for principal reduction. The other component we have in revenue, of course, is the cash flow that we love. As baby boomers, this is what we live for. We want that cash flow from our properties because it pays our bills. It pays for all our fun. It gets us going on cruises, and we can go climb the Eiffel Tower. We can paint in France. We can walk the Great Wall of China due to that cash flow that we get from our tenants. Again, someone else's money. It's the tenant giving it to us. So there are three components. We have the built-in principal reduction and the amortization. We have rental increases, and then we have the cash flow itself. Now, cash flow, I like to have that cash flow. Now, oftentimes we want to build up reserves. Keep in mind that when we make a decision to buy a property, we have a reserve that we build into it. And typically if it's a property that's 12 to 1,800 square feet, we're talking about $100 a month. That's going to accumulate over a number of years. So your first year, you're going to have $1,200. Well, your first year is kind of a jeopardy year. Should you have something break, and things do break. I mean, we have dishwashers and garbage disposals, and we have plumbing issues, whatever. I mean, it's just a normal house. Things do break, so we need to have the cash on hand to do that. Again, paid for by your tenants into a reserve account. But if we want to build up reserves, the first year you take that $100. The second year, what I suggest is that you take your rental increase. Now, here in Phoenix, it's very common for us to go from a $1,500 a month rent to a $1,600 a month, and it gives us $100 additional a month. So you can take your scheduled out of $100 a month that we schedule when we first buy the property. We're putting it into reserves. Then you can add this $100 rental increase to the reserve. So now instead of getting $1,200 a year into your reserves, you're now going to get $2,400 a year. So at the end of the second year, if you had the first year of $1,200, second year of $2,400, you should have $3,600 in your rental reserve. If we do that one more year, where we take the rental increase, and typically here in Arizona, it's $100. So we'd have the scheduled $100 from our reserves that we did when we did the calculations, plus the first year's rental increase of $100, and now the second year's increase of $100. Now we're putting $300 a month times 12. That's $3,600. Now you'll have $6,000 in reserves. $6,000 in reserves is a pretty nice amount of money to have on hand for reserves, particularly if you only have one property. If you did that for your second property and build up, you could easily get up to $5,000 or $10,000. Beyond that, I don't think you need much more in reserves. So once you have anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 in reserves, typically, all 10 properties are not going to have their air conditioner go out all at the same time. So typically $10,000 in reserves should be plenty for the most time, so you can use that money for something else. So around $8,000 to $10,000 in reserves, probably more than adequate. And again, it's paid for by your tenant on a scheduled basis. So again, how does using other people's money bring you closer to true wealth? Which brings me a little bit into debt. So a lot of advisors think that you should have no debt. Count me as one of those. Should have no debt. However, there is a distinction between having personal debt and having investment debt. In the real estate business, it's almost impossible for you to expand your portfolio without having debt. And we use other people's money to do that. We get mortgages with built-in amortizations, and we do this very conservatively, and we make sure that our loan to values are within reason. We never jeopardize the asset. So we build in a couple of conservative factors into it, and you're using other people's money, typically the lender, to pay off your mortgage and to allow you to acquire more properties. We're also using other people's money in the fact that we're going to put a tenant in and they're going to pay a rent to live in the property. That's someone else's money, and they are paying you, and you are distributing that however you'd like or however you need to. You certainly need to pay your tax and insurance and your property manager, but you generally have some leftover money, and it's at our discretion where we want to put that money. So we're going to talk about building us up the first 3 years, do a capital improvement fund, and in years 3+, and that depends. I put that in there because they kind of overlap depending on which property this is. If it's your second property, we can start doing a principal reduction much quicker. So instead of taking that increase in rent, remember we're raising it from $1,500 to $1,600. Instead of putting that into reserves, once your reserve fund is established, now we can start paying off that principal reduction and get the properties free and clear. Now, keep in mind, free and clear allows you to sleep well at night. Just think if we had 10 properties and you had gotten them free and clear. 10 properties in Maricopa County, free and clear, is going to give you somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 each and every month, free cash flow to yourself. So you're going to be looking for anywhere from $120,000 to $150,000 a year, every year, basically for the rest of your life. And this is something that you can put as a legacy to your family. Each and every month, this money will keep coming in, and it's so secure. It's like a lifeboat to you. So the quicker we can get this paid off, the better off we are. Now, which leads me to the fact that we have homes. All of us, again, unless you're a trust fund baby, we probably have a mortgage on your property. And there's been questions as to, should we have any mortgages on our property? For me, I think one of the prime things you must do for your family is to get your property free and clear so that your family always has a house over their head and they have a place to call home. Once these properties are debt-free, your life is so much better. So let me ask you, if you're living debt-free, if you have no car debt, you have no house payment, you have no outstanding loans, if your credit cards are all paid off, how much money do you need each and every month? Just think if you took off that repayment out of your monthly budget, and instead of paying credit cards and houses and cars off, you had that free and clear, and all that money that you're paying someone else is now yours. And that's the idea, is to get you out of debt as quickly as you possibly can. But you really do realistically need to have mortgages, but get them paid off as quickly as possible. So here we are taking, if you have a amortized loan, you know that it's going to pay off in 30 years. You can go to the internet, put the interest rate and the original amount of mortgage into the property, and you can get an amortization schedule out of that. It will automatically tell you what will happen if I add another $100 a month. What will happen if I add another $200? Now, in my book, I recommend that you take years 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, and maybe 8, and add that rental increase into your payment. So you're looking at probably getting $500, $600, or $700 a month additional going down as principal reduction on a property. So you're looking at adding another $6,000 to $9,000 in principal reduction every year. And if you can do that, you can pay these properties off anywhere from 11 to about 15 or 16 years. You'll have a free and clear property. Now, if you're a multiple property owner, do we want to spread this out over all the properties? But here's another strategy. When you have debt on a property, that's risk. That means that you're obligated to someone else for that property. Something should happen. You don't make your payments. You get sick. You have some kind of issue. You start running into trouble. Your bank could take your property. Not going to really happen, but this is always something that could happen. In 2008, 9, and 10, it was not the real estate that took down people. It was the debt on the real estate. So we want to remove that debt. Now, what if you had 10 properties? What if you took all the principal reduction that you had additional on those 10 properties and started putting it on the very first property that you bought? That property would really start getting some principal reduction on it. So instead of having just one property getting principal reduction, you'd have the results of 10 properties on that. And just think how quickly you could pay that first property off. And once that gets paid off, you take the payment and the additional principal reduction that you're using, and you put it on number two. So now you've even got more rapid payoff. And it won't be long, you'll have 2 or 3 or 4 properties free and clear, paying off the others in your portfolio, and you'll have 10 free and clear properties. Your life will become your own. You can have $120,000 to $150,000 of free growing cash flow each and every year coming into you. You'll know when you wake up on January 1st, I'm going to make 150 grand this year, because your rentals are going to do that. And if you're still here in Maricopa County, keep in mind that if we add $100 on 10 properties, that's adding another $1,000 a month times 12. You can grow your principal or grow your cash flow by about $12,000 a year every year. So it couldn't take very long before he's getting $150,000 to $200,000 a year. So this is just a great strategy for you. Why aren't you all doing this? Now, the question I get all the time too is, when should I add that cash flow in? So I have to tell you that cash flow is kind of sacred to me. You know, that's what we're doing this rental for. This is what we work with our tenants. This is what we take care of our properties. And the goal is to keep all that cash flow for ourselves. So that's the third component that you have. You have the amortization that's scheduled from your mortgage. You have the additional rental revenue from increases in your rent, and you have the cash flow component. So there are times in your life when you're going to want to start taking that cash flow, and if you're close and just add it and you have some events, maybe I want to retire in 10 years and I don't need the cash flow. I'm still working. I've got an income. My real estate practice is doing really well. So you take that cash flow, which is other people's money, and add that to your principal reduction and start targeting a property so that you get this portfolio as free and clear as you possibly can. And just think what you'll have. Just think how it could be with 10 free and clear properties. Your life is your own. So what are some of the other things that we're talking about? First, let's talk about debt. I think that debt is one of those things that you should really be very judicious of. It's a tool. It's a tool for an investor. It's nothing more than a tool. So you need to use it and get rid of it. When you're done with it, you put it back in the shelf. So we want to get these properties as free and clear as we possibly can. And I get this question all the time. If I have a loan on a property, when should I refinance it? The answer is probably never. Probably never. We've got interest rates so low, you need to ask yourself, why am I spending the additional expense? Because putting a loan on your property is fairly expensive. This is not something that's cheap. Why am I putting an additional expense on there? Am I going to be able to pay this off in a year or two? So if it costs you $8,000 to refinance your mortgage, how quickly is that $8,000 going to be paid off? Do I get $250 or $300 differential because I've changed the interest rate from 3 to 2 and I'm saving that much money? If you're not saving that much money, why are you doing it? Because that $8,000 comes right out of your pocket. And I'm going to tell you, if you have a free and clear property and you want to put some mortgages on it and take some of that cash that you've earned over years, you always have to ask yourself, and I would always ask my client, if I'm going to take $300,000 out of this property, what am I going to do with that money? Why am I doing this? Why am I taking that money out? If it's to buy a motorhome or a boat or I want a Maserati, well, okay, that's great. If you're my age and you've got a lot of properties and everything's doing well, but if this is just a toy and you can use that money elsewhere better, you still have things to pay off, you still got kids to put through school, then don't do that. If you're going to take $300,000 off to buy 2 more properties to add to your portfolio, count me in. But whenever you sit down with the client, before you make a sale, before you make a loan decision, ask your client, what are we going to do with the money? We need a plan before we do this. If you have a plan and it's going to be something that we've thought through and it's going to make us money, by all means, let's do that. We also have this question all the time because I am so risk averse. You know I'm very, very risk averse. we're entering into that cycle. I get this question all the time. When should we start getting aggressive? When should we start leveraging? Well, we're turning into that cycle. I think we have just one little more downturn. That's what my timing model shows, that we're going to have maybe 3 or 4 months of just a little bit of slowdown. Probably here in Phoenix, you may not see anything. Across the country, we're going to start seeing a little bit of a slowdown. Here in Phoenix, maybe not so much. This is an accumulation phase for us because we have an explosive phase coming right behind us. So in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months is when we start getting a little more aggressive and start putting some more leverage on our properties, because we want to accumulate properties, in which case we're going to be using leverage. Again, leverage is to be done very, very judiciously. We never, ever want to jeopardize our asset. We never want to take it to the point where there's no margin of error. This is our money. This is our client's money. This is sacred money. We have to be very, very careful with what this money is. And if you can do that and it's going to be beneficial to you, by all means, that's what you do. But you have a plan, you think it through, and think it through a couple times. Make sure where you're going to go with this. So that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to be very, very conscious of your time. I told you it's going to be around about 23 minutes or so. We still have a few minutes. Next week, we're going to talk about diversification and an integrated asset approach. That's one of my favorite topics. I love working as an integrated asset approach. Once you understand the concept, it's going to elevate you to just a whole different platform, because you're going to know what you're competing with. You're going to talk the jargon of your investors, and it just diversification gives you so much more risk reduction. We just love that. So I want to talk to you about the fact that we have got seminars coming, we've got workshops coming, we've got designations coming. We're just waiting for the ADRE to give us some approval on this. We're going to start working on the workshop very, very soon. If you would like to get in line, if you'd like to register for that when it comes in so that you can be notified, please email us to creatingwealth@westusa.com. We put a flyer together on each one of these webinars so that you can remind yourself what we talked about. Also, you can send to your clients. Tatum is going to go and put this into a YouTube. You can send that to your client as well. And if you'd like to get the flyer, email us at creatingwealth@westusa.com. You know, I always offer the fact that you're welcome to come in and talk to me. If you've got some strategies, if you've got some thoughts, if you've got property you want a second opinion on, I'm more than happy to do that. I offer that as my gift back to you. And you're welcome to call at 602-942-4200, or you can get hold of me at michael@michaeldouville.com. So I want to thank you so very, very much for listening today. I want to make you have a great week, and my very best to you. Bye-bye now.